everybody, welcome back. This is Jason Lowe, your host for the AI Diatribe podcast. And joining me today for today's episode is the wonderful and illustrious Karaline Venezia from Capacity. She is their Chief Revenue Officer. For those that aren't familiar with Capacity, they are a company that is all about automation, AI, basically the future of work. They're an AI-powered support automation platform that's really designed to help businesses grow or scale, streamlining everything from customer support to internal operations. They have a hand in everything from bots to orchestration to integrations, all sorts of really great stuff. Much more than just a bot company. So, hi, Karaline. It's great to have you on here.
Hey, Jason. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So, first off, before we get going, do you know how cool it is to talk to somebody who also has an economics degree?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. I feel like it's a unique group of people that fit that bill. So very excited to be able to talk through econ with EJA. Although I don't know how much of your audience will be excited to hear that conversation.
Yeah, well, we gotta convince them that it's not the dismal science. There's nothing dismal about economics at all. But I am really curious. I mean, going from applied econ, obviously you had a joint degree, right? Applied econ and business management.
Exactly. Yep. So it was a combined major.
So how did you get into the AI space? What was that? What did that journey look like?
Yeah, it wasn't an expected or planned journey, as I feel like most career paths are not. But ended up going for business, econ, working in finance for a little bit 20 years ago out after college, deciding that was very much not the right path for me from a career standpoint, and then quickly pivoted. And honestly, I through a friend got introduced to customer experience tech and started working for a company that did customer experience measurement. Really loved working with clients to one, understand the customer experience, understand how to optimize and consult with them to do that, and have fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the contact center space, and have been there for the past 15 or so years. So again, wasn't expected. If you'd asked me back then when I was getting my econ major if I would be in contact center, customer experience, AI technology, I would not have guessed that. But I love where I am, love what I do, love working at Capacity. So very excited to have made my way here.
That's pretty awesome. And you know what? That's actually a common theme. There are a lot of people in the CX space that they did not even think they would end up there, but somehow they ended up there either naturally or circumstantially, and they just kind of love it. It's just where they ended up.
It is a common theme. I feel like I've met so many great people in the contact center space and being in this world and being in the AI space. But if you learn a little bit more about everyone, it's certainly not where they started or where they thought they would end up. So I feel like, yes, it is a very common theme, but I think having so many people with so many different perspectives in this industry it's made it a very fun one to work in.
Now, this is going to sound corny, but I actually think the economics of all of the different areas of practice in a business, it very much applies to CX because that's where you are really seeing the frontline exhibition of supply and demand. I mean, supply and demand is going to dictate how you're going to treat your customers, what type of products you're going to offer them, what ways you're going to try and continue to make them happy. I mean, I would imagine that your economics training helps you make some pretty good decisions in your position, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, I think honestly, it's a great foundation to have. I think in any role when you're in business is just to understand the background of the economics that lead into all of this. But I think especially when you get into the CX, the AI world, and now that we're facing a transformative time in the industry where you have so much AI being applied, when you're looking at the economics of if we apply automation here, what does that do from a staffing perspective? So I will say it definitely foundationally has helped in the role and given a somewhat unique perspective on how you think about implementing technology and consulting with clients on where do they want to start to make investments, how do they want to do this. So I'm happy to have the background. I think it again it gives everyone a unique perspective on when you're looking at this, when you're doing the modeling of does it make sense to implement automation here? Will I get the biggest ROI? Where do we start? It definitely has a huge benefit to have that background.
Well, now that we've made Adam Smith feel very proud of us, we can transition to something a little bit more pertinent, like AI specifically. I am curious how I mean, you're a chief revenue officer. You're responsible for all the money things, and AI is having a very interesting and material effect in the way sales is transpiring. So how have you seen it to start to uh, evolve or transform sales?
Yeah, no, I think it's an incredibly exciting time to see how AI is impacting sales. And it's funny being in the CRO role, clearly responsible for the revenue of the organization. And as you said at the beginning, capacity, we're a support automation platform. So we are working with our clients to automate their internal and external support functions. And when we look at clients and kind of how we're partnering with them, we're partnering with self-service deflection. So if you look at, consumers coming to a website, calling in for service support, we are there helping give them instant answers to the questions that they're asking if they're looking for, where's my order status, what those are. But we're also now making a transition into the sales side of that space. So where capacity plays has been moved pretty significantly towards the sales side of that, where we have our virtual agents that are available on retail websites like a Carter's or a PacSun, where if a is coming in and they're asking questions around specific products, our solution is popping up and recommending products that they can purchase. We're helping support that buyer journey. And, we are seeing customers like Culligan where we're doing SMS and voice virtual agents where speed to lead is incredibly important. So when somebody comes to their website to look at water softeners, being able to instantly help them support that buyer journey, schedule appointments for people to go provide those servicing requests, and improving their revenue. So it's been very interesting to see it on the side from a client perspective of how can they implement our own solutions to help drive their revenue, drive the things that matter to them. But also as we're looking at our own internal functions and sales functions, we're doing the same thing on our end, which is I want to be able to expand my sales team as much as possible and make them as effective as possible. And AI is providing really unique opportunities to do that, where if you think about traditional B2B sales, you have your SDR team going and looking for who are the prospects and how do we craft a message to engage them and speak about the product in an effective way. And one thing that we've really rallied the team around is where can we implement AI within our own operations to make us as effective as possible? So that is the research of who are the companies that we should be talking to. Go look at, the buyers that are within our, addressable market and really understand what's going in their business and how do we want to speak to them about those problems and what capacity can bring to the table there. So where we're applying it internally versus where we're applying it for our customers is slightly different, but it's really around that search. It is your sales team on steroids. They can be much more effective. They can reach many more people, and they can really increase their conversion rate, whether that is on a Carter's website or at Culligan where they're trying to book meetings, to my internal teams where they're looking at expanding how many people they can reach out to in a day, but they're having much more effective conversations because they're able to craft the messaging, craft the conversation to things that truly matter to the people that we're trying to touch base with. So it's twofold in terms of how we're seeing it applied, but it's an incredibly exciting time to start to apply it and test things out internally and get our teams really excited about applying it in their day-to-day in addition to selling it.
That's great. Sounds like it's having a rather interesting effect internally. And you're right. You are in a position not only to sell these great features to your customers, but also to drink your own champagne, so to speak. But I have to ask this. So, yes, AI is assisting in some ways the sales process. You're getting to know your customers a little better. You're able to address them more directly, maybe have a customized messaging surrounding what it is that you want to sell them. But are you seeing any sort of hesitation in buying out there because AI innovation is happening so fast? Are you experiencing that at all at capacity?
I think we're experiencing a phase where there are so many options when you look at, and again, when I think about the clients that I'm talking to, the prospects that I'm talking to, I think everyone knows that they want to leverage AI within their business and that it can provide ROI. I think where we're seeing buyers struggle is where do they start? We've talked about a couple different options here. Do they want to do their internal support functions to get the teams to understand how do they automate support, or how do they apply AI? Business is more efficient? Do they want to start externally? So I think we're seeing people take a pause and say, are we taking the right approach here? I don't want to just go with somebody came to me and told me they could build me a quote bot for my website. And I don't want to just go with that when there's a larger picture that I could be putting in place here. So I think that's what I'm seeing most, which is not a, hesitation other than are we making the right strategic decision on where we start? And what we've done actually on the capacity side to help our clients here is we've implemented an AI assessment process where if we have a client, and it's funny, I had a conversation with somebody a couple of hours ago where they're in this boat where we've had a great conversation. They're very excited about the technology. They want to automate their internal support. They want to have external kind of voice support for their site, and their conversation was, we just don't know if this is the right place to start. Is there more we should be doing? And what we've been able to do is really take that consultative approach with our clients to say, let's look at your whole business. Let's send a survey out to your entire executive team, really understand all the areas that we could potentially automate today. Come back, really say, based on what we've seen from the survey you completed, what are the 4 or 5 top areas that are going to be impactful for you? And then come back with some consultative recommendations on, this is where we would start. That's going to drive the right ROI. That's going to set you up for success long term. Because I think people right now don't want to make short term decisions with the pace of change in the industry. They want to know that the decisions they make today are still going to be impactful 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And it's really important to make sure you're looking at that long term roadmap before you implement a point solution. So I think that is what we're seeing. So it's definitely getting creative on how do you be much more consultative with buyers than just trying to say, hey, here's the solution. Let's get this in place. Let's think more strategically about how do we implement the right technology to make you successful, not just today, but 3 years down the road when you know you're still going to need to continuously improve and optimize what you're building.
Well said. Well said. I think AI is really driving everything towards a more consultative approach across the board.
Yeah.
The customers themselves, the providers themselves, anyone in the tech advisor space or the MSP space for that matter, are having to evolve and become a lot more consultative in nature. So I am curious, as you're going through this with your customers, have there been any surprising trends that you've recognized at all? I mean, is there anything that has been a little bit unexpected, maybe perhaps some functionality or some features that the capacity is able to offer that you weren't exactly expecting to have so much demand for?
Honestly, I'd say it's not necessarily surprising given when you think about the challenges that businesses come to us with, which is, what's the right starting point, which you talked about. And then the biggest concern I hear is like, we're not ready. We don't have our data ready. Everything isn't in the same place. So I would say that is, I think, of the top things I hear, the next one, which is we have to have our data cleaned up. And in the one feature we did an acquisition about is what we call, it's our answer engine platform now, but it's the ability to index data where it lives. And I would say that is the top driving factor for a lot of our applications today, which is we want to be able to connect to our clients' data to facilitate the self-serve use cases. We need to be able to go into their, if you think about a contact center use case, and again, I'll use a really generic example, but if a customer is calling out and saying, can I make this return? We need to connect to your SOP documentation, the information that agents are using today to answer those same questions. And we have different variations of people that it's in a SharePoint, it's in a knowledge base, it's over here. There's all these different systems where that's located in. And they don't want to have to go and do that lift and shift of, oh, we have to take this information and then go load it into a different knowledge base or a different system. So the answer engine capability that we've built in can index that data where it lives. So you don't have to move it. We just connect to that data. It could be in video form, it could be in audio form, it can be in document form. And the ability that we have to, one, integrate with those third-party systems like a CRM or an order management system to push and pull data, but then index all of that SOP documentation, all of that audio, video documentation, that has been the biggest driving factor that we've seen. And not necessarily surprising, but I would say it alleviates that concern of this is going to be a monumental undertaking to get all of our data in one place. It's no, it can stay where it is, and we can connect to it to be able to facilitate these use cases.
Well, you're right. That's an intimidating thing when people are like, okay, where is all my stuff? Data really is. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have that data collected and categorized or at least accessible to these different tools, you're not going to be able to be effective with your application of AI. I mean, it sounds like that's a very consistent trend in what you're dealing with, which quite frankly isn't surprising. On a podcast episode we had a couple episodes ago, we dealt with specifically that. I mean, the data is the first thing that you've got to clean up and get sorted before you can really go anywhere with.
It's funny. I think the biggest surprising piece is how much people think they're not ready when they have a lot of that already. So I think that's like, I think people overestimate how much cleanup is going to be required. Where again, that contact center example is a good use case. Like your agents have access to all of this today. The AI, you're just training a virtual agent. It needs access to the same content. So as long as we can index it where it lives, as long as we can connect to the CRM systems, which we have those integrations too, you're much farther down the path typically than our clients are much farther down the path than they think they are at that outset, which again, data cleanliness is incredibly important. I think people tend to be more surprised based on the ability to connect to that data that they are farther down that.
Yeah, AI is intimidating. People are closer than they think they are, but there's so many analogies, right? I mean, I'm a young kid. I'm learning how to ride a bike. I'm seeing these people flying by on these bikes, and I think it's so cool. And I have the hardest time getting on there. But then as soon as I get on and my dad gives me a push, then sure enough, it takes me 30 seconds and suddenly I'm able to ride like a pro. I think that this actually happens a little bit in the AI space too, is that there are many companies that are hesitant. They don't want to explore because it's so scary and so big and intimidating. But if they were to just dive in and start doing something, anything, something, it would start getting them used to doing more.
I think it's a great point because I think everyone, and again, this is more generalization that I would want it to be, but I think people overcomplicate it. When you hear AI, it's that intimidating, it's that scariness, it's the, oh my God, stuff ready. It's going to be such a huge undertaking. And to your point, a lot of times it isn't. It's the getting on and starting those use cases where, I'll share a simple example, but we have a client of ours where, you're talking about we need to get AI into your contact center. Your teams today are spending an exorbitant amount of time just authenticating people when they call in. I think their team, like they had thousands of agents. They were asking 5 questions to authenticate every time they did. That was increasing the average handle time of their call just to a crazy amount where we've implemented a virtual agent. I was like, let's just start with authentication. If you just have a virtual agent naturally answer the call, ask those 4 questions, you're cutting your average handle time in half. The ROI from that was millions of dollars. So I think the simplicity that you can start with to show value and expand from there, this isn't a boil the ocean, we have to do everything. It is an iterative process. Let's start with those kind of get the car out of the garage use cases where it's low, can continue to iterate from there. And I think that's what's worked really well, again, with those AI assessments that we talked about before, which is just showing that like this doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. It can be a simple use case. You don't have to be fully ready. We can start to iterate and build and grow from there to get you where you want to be on.
So let me ask you a little bit of a controversial question, but you're in sales, so I can do this. Since there is so much fear, let's call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about incorporating or implementing AI, is fear a good sales tool for you right now?
I would not like to say fear is a good sales tool. I think the uncertainty is a good sales tool in that there is a lot of openness. We talked about the consultative approach and how much I think AI is turning sales into that consultative type of selling, which I love. And I think that's what's fun about sales is that you really get to understand your client's business and you get to learn about new industries every day and really help them to understand what we just talked about, which is there are simple use cases. You don't have to have all your data perfectly clean in some database to make this happen. Let's sit down and talk about really what's going on in your business and what you're trying to drive. So I would say that uncertainty opens the door for people who really want to learn about their clients' businesses and don't just want to make a sale. They want to partner and really drive value for their clients. That is what's opening the door for us. And I think that's where we've seen success is really becoming that consultative partner with our clients to make sure they're one, making the right decisions, two, that they're actually seeing the ROI from making these decisions. Because again, I think that's worst case scenario, you're going out, it's going to drive. And we have that consultative approach across the board. It's not just let's get this implemented and walk away. It's let's go back in a quarter and say, are you actually seeing the results? Okay, now let's optimize from here. And it isn't a standalone solution that you just have to go implement and you're on your own. It is much more of a let's continue to build from there. So
Ongoing, yeah.
that ongoing piece and that uncertainty of it means that buyers need that consultative, they need that true partner. And I think that's opening a lot of opportunity for the right partner to come in.
Well, you've talked a lot about, well, a considerable amount about AI and the impact it's having. You also talked about how it's affecting you internally as far as research and preparation for things. Do you have any metrics, I mean, internally that are showing any sort of an indication as to what the impact of the internal application of AI is having on your sales force? I mean, for example, is there something that you started doing and there was some sort of a corresponding measurable increase in some positive category that would show up on an ROI?
Yeah, so a good example of that research piece that we talked about before is, send out emails from your sales team and you look at the conversion rates of did this turn into an meeting? Did it then turn into an opportunity? And if we did this based on really tailored research that we did our business and around how we could help, are we seeing conversion rates increase? Are we seeing open rates increase? Are we seeing those meetings? And we're seeing significant increases when, again, it logically makes sense. When you can scale the research that you're doing on a client, on their business, and come to them with very tailored recommendations of, hey, I saw you did this. This is how we're helping very similar clients. This is where we would recommend that you guys start. Would you like to have a conversation about this?
That's great.
Conversion rates almost double in terms of us having those meetings, and those opportunities turn into opportunities much faster and move through the cycle much faster. So again, I think it's that personalization piece. It's that really understanding our client's business. AI is helping us do that at scale. And if you think about that process before, it was you go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you try to look through somebody's business, you try to look at like, what it is. And I would say even then, you still have very middling results in terms of how personalized that are and how you can do that. AI, you can do that for hundreds of people and really get very tailored. And that is where we're seeing that significant improvement in honestly conversion rates of initial emails, initial outreach to opportunities, and then to speeding up and accelerating those opportunities in the sales pipeline.
So, do you have any internal pushback? I mean, are you having any segments that are like resistant to that change, or is everybody just very much enthusiastically adopting these different AI tools?
Honestly, like it is a very top down, like our CEO has been very adamant about we need to have machines in place. We need to really make to make the organization scale. We have grown incredibly fast. And in order to continue to scale at the pace that we want to scale at, we want to be able to have machines and automations in every facet of the organization so that we can grow at the pace that we want to. So as opposed to seeing hesitation, we're seeing people come up with ideas like you're getting rewarded for raising your hand and saying, hey, I thought of a way we could automate this process. And here's my idea on how to do that. And it's really fun to see the ideas that the team comes up with. And honestly, like there's more and more momentum around it. We have Slack channels that are all about creating these automations. Oh, I've tried this technology. Have you guys tried this? Let's implement this as a team. So I think we've just seen a lot of momentum. And again, I think it's because it's top down that we're all doing this together and really trying to find ways to be innovative, ways to accelerate our growth leveraging AI.
Sounds like you're doing it the right way. Sounds like you're ahead of the curve. You're not catching up. You're probably maybe a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think we definitely, I think there's things that work, there's things that don't work, but I think that culture of like, let's try things, let's get excited about trying things and put things in place. And again, we've talked about this the whole time. It's iterative. There are going to be things that we try that don't work, but I think making sure that the team all feels really comfortable coming up with ideas to raise their hand and say, hey, let's try this. This is something that I want to try and I put this in place. There's a lot of testing, a lot of trials in there across the board, not just in sales or the revenue organization, but on engineering, doing vibe coding, testing things and sharing wins and getting excited about when tests do work.
Vibe coding. Oh, that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down,
Different
isn't
route,
it?
but yes, no, it's not just the revenue organization; it's the entire organization where we're trying to apply things.
Coming at this from another angle as it relates to fear, uncertainty, and doubt, we all know that there are certain, I don't want to say lies, but perhaps maybe omissions and half truths that are out there to try and get people motivated to invest in some AI stuff. What do you think are some of the biggest untruths or omissions that are being told in AI sales right now? I mean, what are people going and making noise about that may not necessarily be 100% pertinent?
So it's a good question. I think the biggest one that I've seen is just the level of effort to do this. And again, we've started to talk about this, but I think there's some companies out there that are saying like this is going to be completely seamless to get this up and running. And I think that's where I would start to raise a little bit of a red flag and get a little concerned where someone's saying this is going to be the easiest thing in the world to get setting up. And again, it can be simple. There's a lot of support, but in order to set these up right, where you're actually going to see the benefit, there has to be that thought process. There has to be that intentional implementation of how are we doing this today? How do we scale this, leveraging AI, and how do we really map out the process that will work? So I think that's the one piece where again, I think not necessarily lies, but half truths that you're seeing companies come and say, nope, this will take you 10 days to get set up and it'll start doing this automatically. This is that iterative process. So to get to those ROI metrics that again, I think they're there and they certainly are things that people can get to. And we talked about, those short-term wins. But when you see the metrics that some are touting, I think that's been a journey to get there, as we've talked about. And you're seeing the results of somebody's marathon, somebody's initial like short jog of AI. So just making sure we're setting the right expectations around what is the ROI you can get to long term versus what is that near term ROI and what those different paths look like is where I would say you see the most kind of half truths in the industry today.
Yeah, I would agree. It's funny. I'm going to throw this analogy out there just because it's fun, but it's applicable. So I was watching Welcome to Wrexham the other day. I don't know if you watch that show at all.
I've heard about it, but not watched it yet.
So, okay, we're in season 4. And for those that are curious, there was just one of the episodes where there's a guy on the team. Well, he's in the management of the team that has been asked to run a marathon as a fundraiser, and he is not built for marathoning. The guy is 6'5", probably 280, 290, not in the best shape. But what is interesting is that because he had access to all the fitness people and everything associated with the Wrexham Football Club, he was able to do an initial fitness assessment, which really helped guide his training program and make sure that he got to where he could endure a marathon much more efficiently and faster. And so, would you agree that probably AI readiness assessments probably serve a little bit of that same function, right? Let's go in, let's see not only where we got to go, we all know where we got to go, but how long is it going to take to get there? The only way you're going to figure out how long it's going to take to get there and the steps that you have to take is if you figure out where you are right now.
Exactly. And I think that's literally, we've talked about the ones that we do at Capacity. That is the whole purpose of that, which is we need to understand organizationally. I think that the biggest problem that we've been able to solve for at Capacity is, you think about AI point solutions. There's a multitude of vendors, and there are point solutions that you can select where you could go say, hey, we want a virtual agent in our contact center. We have an AQA technology here. We have workflows that we need to do here. And I think that the challenge with that is you're looking at it very specific to a problem as opposed to holistically, where when you think about the Capacity platform, it's the AI orchestration, it's that knowledge layer. We're connecting to a client's data, and we can facilitate a number of different use cases. We can do the virtual agent, the deflection self-service, and the buyer support where we increase conversions. We can do the agent assist component where we're doing screen recording, we're doing auto QA on 100% of your interactions. We can do the outbound campaigns and workflows after the fact where we're increasing again those conversions and automating those repetitive processes. But with all of those options, you want to really say, like, where should we start? And those AI assessments understand where you are today. Like, where are we? And not only that, but what are those use cases that we should start with? And I think that's the big piece, which is, in your marathon example, like, what is that training that you need to start with? Like, what are those biggest areas that are going to be the gaps that you have? And most people don't want to start with, you have these really high ROI things that are like, this is going to take a lot of effort, but the ROI is phenomenal. Or there's those really low lift things that are going to have minimal ROI. And the sweet spot that we look for in the recommendations are those, what's the lower lift, but the high ROI that gets that car out of the garage, that gets people excited about. This is where we should start. This is what the ROI will be. But look, long term, that big shiny rock of the ROI you want to get to, you can get there. It is just a phased approach to do it. So it's that training program in a marathon. It's like, this is the path to get us there, where you are going to see some short-term wins. You're going to see the value and be able to build that story internally to get to the point where you want to get to. And I think that's the little bit of the untruth that we talked about before as well, which is people look at that end result and that's the expectation in 3 months, and you're like, that is not the 3-month expectation. That is the year-long expectation, or whatever that timeline is. And I think setting those right expectations is incredibly important because everyone is on the same page to know what needs to happen to get us there. And I think, again, that is the goal with the AI assessments. These things are complex. They're larger projects that we want to undertake, but there's a short-term wins that we can start with.
Well, and you touched on something that I think is really, really important, right? Okay, so there's the 4 quadrants, right? High return, high effort. High return, low effort, low return, low effort, low return, high effort. Obviously, you're going to do the high return, low effort first, but if you think about it strategically, and if you do things in the right order, doing the right precursors or these things that have dependencies for some of these other greater effort things, you can do some of your low hanging fruit and set the table for some of this higher effort, high return stuff by actually doing some of these prerequisites early. That's an important part of the strategic planning that I think a lot of companies, maybe they're in a rush to adopt whatever they can, right? Hey, we got to adopt AI everywhere we possibly can. But they don't think it through. They're not thinking in these different stages, in these different pieces, and doing these dependency mappings and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a key piece of it where, we started with, I'll use that average handle time use case that we talked about before, where you're just doing the authentication. All right, well, we're connecting to your CRM now, and the CRM now opens the door to all of these different use cases that we can eventually do.
Yeah.
Connected to your contact center data. So we start with this use case. Now we're looking at all the intents that are calling for, and we have that strategic ability to say, okay, here are the other 3 top intents that are coming from. or that are coming into the contact center, we need to connect to this data. We're already integrated into the CRM. Now we can just add this to the next. So it happens much faster once you start with that initial data integration and map out what integrations need to happen to be able to facilitate deflection or real-time agent assist, or like all of that plays together. This is not just we start here and then this has no impact on everything else. To your point, it is an ecosystem of the customer experience or the internal experience, and you start in one place and it just makes each next stage of that process easier and easier and enables you to address more and more difficult, more higher ROI use cases in the future.
Now, you have an interesting perspective internally in your company because not only are you chief revenue officer, so you're in charge of all of that, but you're also in charge of marketing too, right? Marketing's under your umbrella. So you have an interesting perspective on a variety of different functional areas of a business. So with that in mind, are there any innovations that are happening or any of these different trends as far as AI that you're more excited about than others? Is there anything that you're really excited about seeing it develop or turn into something more substantial?
On the revenue side, marketing and sales are so intertwined, especially because we live under the same organization that, everything that's marketing does is impacting sales, and it's driving that funnel for us. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about, especially when I think about internally on our organization and how we're leveraging it, is the scalability of the team. Like we are still a relatively, from a team size, we are not a gigantic organization at this point. We've grown incredibly rapidly, but the scalability that it gives our team to be able to really play in areas that we just haven't been able to from a bandwidth standpoint is what excites me the most. It
So
gives
you're
us
talking about using AI as a force multiplier, basically.
force multiplier internal. That is literally the name of the Slack channel in terms of how we talk about the ideas and what we want to implement across the team in our organization. And that is truly what I'm most excited about, because I think it's going to be transformative over the next couple of years in terms of how teams operate. It is literally making each person on the team a superhero. And that's literally how we talk to our clients as well, which is think about this. And our whole mission as a company is to help teams do their best work, being able to help our internal teams do their best work as well, where the pieces that truly need our team's expertise, that is what they're focusing on. That is what they're doing. I want my sales team on the phone with our clients doing that consultative work. I don't need research doing those pieces because we can scale their ability to do that. So I think it's never the replacement, it's the augmented piece of combining the AI with the human teams to make sure each of them are focused on the right aspects to really have that full force multiplier effect is what I'm most excited about.
Oh, that was beautifully said. I do want to ask you this one last question. I like to ask leaders that come onto this podcast at the end, specifically, if you were to be offering some advice to companies, to corporate officers or executives, to managers, any sort of leadership, but specifically in your case, to sales leaders that are looking to figure out what to do with AI, that they're navigating the complexities of AI, what advice, other than just dive in and start doing a use case, are there any other pieces of advice that you would give them to help them navigate that?
Look, I think if I think about it from my team's perspective in terms of how we're using it internally, I think that the Slack channel, the encouragement of everyone, like this is not just a leadership goal. It should be across the teams and like get your teams excited about coming up with ideas. I've seen hundreds of great ideas from the team and saying, hey, let's use it here, or let's do this. And people get excited about it and they want the ability to really start and test and do new things with their job and to be able to scale themselves. And I think that's been something that's just been exciting across the board at our company. So I would say whatever you can do to drive that culture of innovation internally within your teams, to have people raise their hand and share ideas and be able to get excitement around it, I would encourage that. It's been phenomenal at our organization to just see how many people do come up with creative ideas and get excited and test things out and share those wins internally. And then from a client standpoint, I would say, look, like from a sales standpoint, if we look at all the clients that we're working with on the retail side, on other industries, and we're working with their sales team to help them improve conversions, I think people share, yes, we've gotten this many sales, we've gotten thousands of new appointments by putting AI in place and putting capacity in place on our websites or their virtual agents. But it's the where are you having gaps today as well, where, I think one of the things that we hear clients say is like, our team isn't available on weekends, or team isn't available on nights. 50% of the meetings that we're booking are after hours. We never would have gotten them. So it's ROI that you're not even thinking about, which is, do we have this ability to
Mm.
support support our buyers that are on our website after hours because we only have 9 to 5 support in the US? Or do we have a lot of people coming to the site weekends that are trying to submit leads and they're going somewhere else because they're not able to? So starting to think about it in a different way, which what are we missing out on that AI can solve for that isn't a replacement to our team? It's augmenting its scaling function. So I think looking at it in both of those ways, again, encouraging creativity is by far, I think, the biggest win that we've had internally.
Well said. It's a whole new world. Well, Karaline, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me on this podcast. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate the insight that you've given, and hopefully we get to talk again sometime soon. We'll
Yeah,
see.
no, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun to have the conversation. So thank you for having me on today.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. This has been a fantastic episode. You know what to do if you like what you heard or you like what you're seeing on the podcast. Do all the things, push all the buttons, do all the liking and the following and stuff like that, all of the social things, because we're just about everywhere. So make sure you're following us wherever you can, and we will see you for our next episode coming soon. Thanks, everybody.